If you're taking portraits, selfies, or even just vlogging, it's very easy to get completely focused on the surroundings, finding a nice location that's going to look good around and behind you. And I really like this wooded area for that very purpose. But there's another reason that I've chosen to do a portrait shot in these woods, and that's because of the lighting. If you're taking portraits, selfies, or even just vlogging, it's very important to think about your surroundings. Not just how they look around you and the contrast of colours. Here, me wearing a nice orange coat against the greens and browns of the trees and the ground around me, but also in terms of the lighting. Now, I've chosen this wood not just because I like the way it looks, but because it also provides some shade. Now, the problem when you're taking pictures of people, whether it's yourself or somebody else, under very bright conditions, is that you can end up with very harsh looking lighting, harsh shadows across the face. One side completely lit, the other side completely dark. And if it is very bright, the subject can't help but squint, and that's not a very flattering look either. So, come into a woodland area like this and you are shaded from the sun. Even on a very bright sunny day, you have very flattering lighting. Now, I've chosen this location on this path because I also like having a leading line behind me. I like to have the background as far away as possible because this is going to allow me to have some shallow depth of field effects where I'm in focus, but whatever's behind me is going to be blurred. And then it's just a case of experimenting with your position and the angle of the camera itself. If there is a little bit of sunlight that is shining through the trees, walk forwards or backwards a little to make sure that it isn't shining on yours or your subject's face. And then try different positions. Now, when you're taking a selfie, you naturally hold the phone out straight in front of you, and that's fine, but let's try some different angles. If I begin to angle the phone upwards, you'll see the path behind me emerging, and that looks like more of a journey. You're telling a story now. It's not just a picture of you, it's a picture of you going for a walk. And that in itself is already more interesting. Or how about an angle with the phone looking up? Now notice those trees behind me are beginning to converge as diagonal lines. If you position yourself directly in between them, it can work as really nice framing. You've got some really nice converging lines doing it this way round. It's all about using the scenery around you for a different looking portrait. And now it's a case of going through the pictures that you've taken. And I recommend taking as many pictures as possible, regardless of the kind of shots that you're taking, to maximise your chances of getting some winners in there. Now, this is just a square on view. I quite like it because the trees look nice behind me and there's a little bit of blurring. If your phone has got an enhanced shallow depth of field effect, you might want to deploy it here, a portrait mode, because that can introduce greater blurring. On this shot, I held the camera low, pointing upwards, not always the most flattering view of the subject. And notice how those lines of the trees, the vertical lines, are now converging. This is an effect that you also see when you're pointing cameras up at buildings, but I quite like it here in this forest, and that in turn provides some quite interesting looking framing on the shot. Moving on, here is the view with the camera held high, pointing down. Again, a more flattering angle for selfies. But the thing that I really like about this compositionally is the path that is surrounding my face so that there is no complication from the trees around me. There's nothing distracting from the main subject, but it also tells a story of the path stretching out behind me. Clearly on this picture, I've gone for a walk, and that in itself makes it a bit more interesting than just a plain portrait.